Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party. On this week's episode we go to another level, because tonight, baby, we want to get freaky with you before heading down to the virtual, socially distanced pub for another round with Another Round. I'm your co-host Alice King, and with me as always is Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. I know Cannes Film Festival's on at the moment, but like we have 100%
We don't talk about
more.
that festival. We don't talk about that festival.
That's true. Well, we have 100% more events on here than they do, so I'm going to take that as a really big positive.
Probably 100% more Vin Diesel as well. Actually, no, they do have Vin Diesel. That Fast and Furious 9 is at the Cannes Film Festival. Because, nothing is stronger than family.
Yeah, yes, it's been nice to see the Natalie Portman memes have been replaced by the Vin Diesel ones. I give it another 12 hours before it becomes mildly annoying.
Well, there'll be no doubt with Fast and Furious this week, apart from the two times I've just mentioned it, because we did it on the previous podcast. But first up today is Freaky, directed by Happy Death Day's Christopher Landon, and stars Catherine Newton and Vince Vaughn. After swapping bodies with a deranged serial killer, 17-year-old Millie Kessler discovers that she has less than 24 hours before the change becomes permanent. She must swap bodies before her other self causes a serial killing riot in the town and at the homecoming dance. Originally titled Freaky Friday the 13th, subtly combining the slasher and body swap elements, this was originally due to come out in early 2020, but was pushed back for obvious reasons several times. But the question is, Lee, was it worth the wait?
Yeah, I remembered like last year when the cinemas reopened in the sort of the June-July period, and kind of for a couple months after, like this trailer was on non-stop. It was just like on repeat. And then it kind of kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And I know sort of like I've got, much like yourself, I've got an American iTunes account. And I know it's been out for quite a while now, sort of on VOD there. And I was always kind of like, oh, whatever happened to that freaky film? And every so often I would see like an advert for it, maybe like on the side of a bus or something. I thought, oh, it's just like leftover marketing materials and it's just going to go straight to VOD. But I was quite excited to see it get added to the lineup last week of films that were coming out. I enjoyed the trailer. Like, it's such an easy sell. It's like Freaky Friday, but with like a serial killer and a teenage girl. Like, the film was everything I expected it to be, and usually I complain about things like that, but that was really enjoyable. It had the best kiss scene I've seen in a film in a long, long time, and that was enough. That was worth the admission on a rainy Sunday afternoon. I was really pleased with Freaky.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the best on-screen kiss since Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, when The Rock and Karen Gillan avatars tried to make out for the first time. Absolutely hilarious. Yeah, one's been like, it was like April last year, then it was June, then it was August, September, then it was like, I think maybe February. I think they were looking for a Valentine's Day, because sometimes there's an alternative horror film comes out on Valentine's Day. And the View Cinema in Aberdeen has had the Freaky poster up since before they closed, like in October and stuff. It's been one of the posters that's been sitting outside. So it was just there biding its time, and now it's come to fruition. So yeah, the premise is, body swap comedy, where it's normally like a mother and daughter or best friends or something like that, or maybe an older version jumps into the younger version of his body with, like, say, 17 again, stuff like that. And you're sort of watching the trailer for this film, you think, why hasn't that actually been done before? It's such a good concept of, it's normally the two people who swap bodies are normally known to each other and are familiar with each other. This was completely different. You had basically this 17-year-old girl going into a serial killer's body, and then the serial killer going into the young girl's body, and then finding out exactly how he could use that body to continue his murder spree. I thought it was really sort of inventive. What did you make of this twist on the premise?
it's one of those ones. You're just surprised it's not been done already. Like, you kind of think about it, like, it's not just films that do this. TV shows do it, cartoons do it. Like, I think the closest I've ever seen to something maybe that does this was like when Homer in The Simpsons was taken over by like a possessed wig. It's just one of those things. It just works so well because it's so simple, and it's just one of those like premises where it's just like, I'm not the big fan of like the Blumhouse stuff. Like, I see the stuff here and there, things like Get Out, for example, loved, and you know the quality can be up and down, and it takes a lot for me to sometimes go along and see those films. Like, they're mass produced almost to the point of like the quality control can be a bit lacking. But I was just sold on the premise where it was just like, again, you just sort of go, it's a teenage girl that becomes a serial killer, and then the teenage girl tries to continue on like the killing spree while the teenage girl's inside Vince Vaughn's body. And it's just one of those ones, like, you know a lot of the jokes that are going to be made, you know where it's all going to go, but there's just something about that where there's something comforting in that, where the performances are also good. There's enough little gags and, you know, shock and horror in there to kind of go, yeah, that was nice. It's one of these solid 3.5 out of 5 films where you're like, it's not good enough to be like a 4, but I have no real complaints and I enjoyed myself. And that is like, you know, the 3.5 is a criminally underrated rating.
Exactly. And I think I did enjoy the film when I watched it. I thought I had a blast with it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think using the word horror is maybe a bit of a stretch. I don't think I was ever scared or worried about, you know, certain characters being in peril from the killer or something like that. You know, it does start off with your very typical slasher opening where a group of teens who are drinking, taking drugs, and having sex out of wedlock are dispatched in brutal fashion by a mass killer who then picks up a mystical dagger, which then ends up swapping the bodies and the consciousnesses of the two bodies later on. So, I mean, it's about as sort of scary as it gets. I mean, the kills are admittedly quite violent, quite over the top, but I don't think there was ever really like the tension there or whatever. I think what it does is it takes the sort of genre stereotypes and stuff like that and does a nice sort of play on them. And I think it certainly works as a body swap comedy. I think it's really quite funny, and there's some hilarious scenes in it. But as a horror movie, I maybe didn't get enough of that. But I mean, what did you make of the breakdown between sort of the comic and the horror elements of the film?
I suppose I use the word horror, and probably the only moment where I would class as a bit horror is like, yeah, there's sort of a bit of a play on. I think The Mask's very similar to, you know, the guy from
Jason Voorhees from
that's the one, yeah,
Friday the 13th
Lake.
Part 3.
That's the one,
not Part 1 or Part 2.
I have seen the first one, so like I will put that in my pro column. But I suppose there was the odd element with, like, you know, there's a person that gets put through like a chainsaw style thing, and there's a couple of kind of violent horror like kills. But it's one of those ones. It starts off, as you say, sort of like this horror movie. Like, I actually thought, like, the blonde girl at the beginning, I was like, you know, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that she's dispatched. And I thought, like, oh, that looks like the girl that's the lead character in this. So part of me thinks, like, is that some sort of meta thing where they're like, the two blonde characters look ridiculously alike? I don't know, but maybe that's my canon in terms of the casting. But I was like, oh yeah, she's going to survive because, like, she's the main character. Something's going to happen here. Oh no, she's dead. But yeah, that first 15-20 minutes, it really does sort of lean into the horror imagery and the stereotypes before having, you know, a bit of a role reversal in terms of becoming sort of like this sort of teen comedy, you know, friends hijinks, you know, very much maybe kind of leaning into sort of the Disney version of a plot like this, but with kind of a bit more murder at the heart of it.
Yeah, it was. I think like there is some over the top kills, and I think there was areas where it maybe could have explored more. Where, you know, you have, you know, the character who's set up as she's very sort of shy, quiet, but she's kind of being slightly bullied at school by, you know, the popular Instagram girls. She's got this teacher who's got a grudge against her, and it's interesting how the killer sort of takes revenge for her in a way, dispatching certain characters, but then also using the character's feminine wiles essentially to lure in other victims in the terms of drunk, horny jocks as well. So that was quite interesting, and also how the the teen girl who is a bit of a bookworm and a bit frumpy gets a makeover from essentially like a 40-50-year-old male serial killer was quite an interesting take on it. I mean, in terms of like body swap comedies, we've had many such as the Change Up, 17 Again, Freaky Fridays, and stuff like that. Where would it sort of rank for you in terms of mining that concept for comedy and also for a bit of empathy and pathos?
I've not seen Freaky Friday, so
on the list.
Yeah, it's coming soon to Missing Frames. No, I've not seen it, but it's one of those ones like you've not seen it, but you know the story, you know the plot. It's one of those ones like even though you can watch something like Freaky, it has it maybe it's because I hadn't seen Freaky Friday, it still felt quite fresh, but it's one of those things. I think it helped. It had this really fun cast at the heart of it, where I just liked seeing what they were doing. I thought they played all well off of each other. They weren't the most developed characters in the world beyond the usual sort of teen movie kind of characters, but I enjoyed seeing them. It felt fresh, and it was one of those things I was watching it thinking like, I'll buy that movie when it's like $5 in iTunes. Like that is the ultimate respect I can give it.
That's how good it is. Once it hits that magical $5, not $6.99, not $7.99, $5. It's a sale.
I'm sold on it, and it's one of those things that's finally convinced me. People have raved about it for years. I will watch the Happy Death Day movies as well. Like that's finally going to happen. I've always enjoyed those trailers. Yeah, people always talk about how good they are, but for some reason I just never got around to them. So I'm going to also make the effort to watch those now off the back of this. I think Christopher Landon did a really good job, and I liked how he blended sort of, all the kind of tones and stuff. So yeah, I want to see more of his work, and I'm lucky that I've got that to mine.
Wow, there you go. Hear that, Christopher Landon? You've got a convert. You've got a new fan, which is great to see, or hear, because I can't see you because we're doing this on a podcast. So, I mean, basically, the main thing that we have to talk about this film is the main two central performances by Catherine Newton and Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn, someone who, burst onto the scene in sort of Swingers in 1996, which I realised yesterday was 25 years ago, which makes me feel really old. And then on the basis of that, he got picked for Jurassic Park, The Lost World. Went through a great run of sort of comedies and stuff like that. Then people seemed to sort of get a bit tired of his shtick, and he sort of had a career lull there, but then sort of almost reinvented himself in the past couple of years with likes of Brawl and Cell Block 99, Drives Across Concrete, Hacksaw Ridge, stuff like this. I mean, what did you make of Vince Vaughn's turn as essentially a 17-year-old girl?
I thought he was very good. It's one of those things, it's so easy to do. Like, there's a little bits of it where it does lean into, like, flailing hands and, like, prancy runs and so on that kind of is a bit cliche, but I thought it worked really quite well. I mean, there's a bit where, a slight spoiler here, where, she finally gets the guy that she's wanted the whole time, but obviously the problem is she's in Vince Vaughn's body. And the part of me was like, I think everyone, you could feel them in the cinema just cringing, going, oh my God, they're
not going to, no, they wouldn't do that, would they? Oh.
And you know what? I was sold on it. Like, I thought, like, the performance was like, that's fine. And it's one of those things, I think credit has to go to the love interest. I can't remember the name of the actor that played him, but I was kind of like going along with it, going, yeah, sure, okay. Yeah, the performance sold it, like that they had this like cute energy kind of going on, and I think that's full credit to Vince Vaughn and his scene partner there. I wish I could remember his name; it's just gone totally blank from me. But
it's Uriah Shelton who played Booker Strode, which is, of course, for horror fans will know that Strode is in the last name of Laurie Strode from the Halloween series. So little things going on there. Yeah, no, I thought he was really good, and the two of them completely sold that moment. I think for me, I do get what you're saying about the flailing hands, and sometimes I think I would blame this on the slightly truncated sort of opening act where we're introduced to Millie Kessler and also the butcher, who is essentially, when we're introduced to Vince Vaughn, he's basically completely silent behind a mask, so we don't get too much idea of his character as a killer or a person. And Millie Kessler only really gets sort of like 5-10 minutes in her own body before we're switched. And yeah, I think there's slight moments like that with the hand flailing and sort of running around in typical sort of teenage girl behavior, where she doesn't really express too much of that when she's in her own body. So he maybe kind of goes too much in certain places, but I think he did do an excellent job overall. I thought he was hilarious in it and get some fantastic moments in it. And yeah, I mean, it's almost his movie. He gets a lot more to do than I think Catherine Newton gets to do, because she has to almost sort of play it straight as the killer, who's very sort of silent, and it's all sort of Michael Myers sort of head tilts and stuff like that. I mean, she's great at the physicality. I think it's just her walk with the jeans on and stuff like that. It's a very sort of, yeah, she gets the physicality of it down, but she maybe doesn't get as much to do with to play around with the personality.
Yeah, there's not too much there, but I think that's kind of it picks the moments where it yeah, like you can I think, yeah, it's hard to describe, but like I think I enjoyed the silence of it all, because it's one of those things, like there just felt like that threat, and I thought she did really good stuff with her eyes. She's a great eyebrow actress as well. Like you could just see how, like, she, with a bit of a change of outfit, that she was able to kind of wrap these people around her finger and kind of go from there. I thought it was I was quite impressed by it all, really. And I think, yeah, like if it was too chatty and all that sort of stuff, it would have kind of played off a little bit. But yeah, I was fine with it personally.
Yeah, so I mean, we're clearly still in the midst of the Renaissance, the return of Vince Vaughn, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does next. But also, with the film, kind of leaves certain elements open for a potential sequel. As with all horror movies, if it does a good bit of business at the box office, they want to make sure that they leave it open so they can produce a sequel and make a bit more money. There has even been talk now, this is difficult for you since you haven't seen Happy Death Day or Happy Death Day to You, that Christopher Landon has expressed some interest in potentially combining those two worlds, because the methodology of the transitions, and particularly also the one in Happy Death Day, are left suspiciously vague enough that you could have a lot more fun with those. And would you be interested in a freaky sequel, getting freaky again, more freaky, or combining with it once you've seen Happy Death Day to You? Would you want to see about maybe combining those universes?
It's probably unnecessary, but like they do kind of, a slight spoiler to say, like the device that causes the swap is still very much in play and around at the end and so on. Like it does have that kind of, well, I hope no one uses that, and it's like, bury it, like smash it up, do something with it. But it's just like you just sort of just see it heading away, kind of like probably to be easily accessed by someone. So yeah, like I think there's definitely a bit of a door opening for that. Maybe probably a very different cast or something in the second one. But I'd go along and see it. Yeah, would I pay to see it, buy it if it was $5.99? Remains to be seen.
Well, so Freaky is out now, on VOD in America, and it's in cinemas now. But for a complete change of tack, I think it'd be safe to say our second film of the episode is the BAFTA and Oscar-winning Another Round by Thomas Vinterberg, a Danish film where 4 teachers embark on an experiment where they each sustain a certain level of alcohol intoxication during their everyday life, testing a theory that people benefit from a slightly elevated blood alcohol content. As a result, their working and personal lives are turned upside down. Now, Lee, when did you first see this film? Because this is another film which feels like it's been around for ages, but it's actually only just now out in the UK, particularly a certain scene from the film. Unfortunately, the end scene of the film, which probably everyone's already seen if they're on film Twitter, as opposed to actually seeing the film. But this sort of debuted at the London Film Festival in the UK last October, went on to win all the awards, and finally has come out in the UK this week. So when did you first see it, and was this one that you were shouting cheers at?
Yeah, so I saw this last year at the London Film Festival, and I probably saw how you saw a lot of films at the time, where I was heading north that day. So I watched the first half an hour on the TV. Well, like I watched on my laptop, and then I had to transition to the mobile phone, where I tried to watch it while walking with a suitcase for about 40 minutes, and then while I was on it, waiting to get on a bus, and then on the bus. So I had a bit of a mediocre experience watching another round. Didn't really, I enjoyed it, but I didn't appreciate it as much, and it was like no reflection on the film whatsoever. But I'd been waiting to see it in the cinema. I noticed last week it was like a 99 cents rental on iTunes for the week. I was like, no, it's finally nearly coming to the cinema. And I went to see it on Friday evening, and I loved it. It was a totally different experience. Like it won't shock anyone to know that I barely saw actually any of the film, where I was watching it going, oh, that happened in it. Oh, that happened in it. And it was just one of those ones. It was just like much of the time, it was like, God, did I actually even watch at least 20 minutes of this movie? Like, it was amazing how much was lost in my visual experience. So, yeah, it's been a long overdue chance to really finally watch another round, and I loved it. I thought it was one of those things, another film in the cinema where I enjoyed a good little cry to it. Hot off the similar feeling watching Supernova, but it's one of those ones, like, I think it's impossible not to tie it into the situation we're in just now in the world, where I think we're all struggling, a bit fed up. I think probably my feeling talking to myself and some friends is that we all thought, well, once things open up again, or once things return to a bit of normality, we're back to normal. Life kind of picks back up again. And I think we've maybe kind of realized through this kind of past 15 months, and with having the chance to do the things that we loved again, whether that's going to the cinema, seeing friends, eating out, being around friends and family, that we've lost something, or we're very much now aware that we're not the full people that we thought we were. I mean, that I can certainly speak for myself in that respect. And I was just watching these characters going, yeah, it might be that I don't have the topped up alcohol level that these characters do, but like I can relate to it, that feeling of just life being unfulfilled, for being a bit bored, really. It's a feeling we've probably all gone through to some degree in the past 15 months, and probably still are, and just wondering how we get that back, and what lengths we're willing to go to achieve that, whether that's alcohol, medication, who knows, and stuff like that. But it's one of those films, it's hard not to see ourselves probably reflected in these characters, probably most of all in Mads Mikkelsen's Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw it at the London Film Festival as well, and I was going through a streak of just struggling to enjoy films on watching them on my phone and stuff like that. But this was the first one which really sort of connected with me, and it was the first film that I gave 5 stars to. There was only about 2 films at the film festival I gave 5 stars to. This was one of them. I just thought it was a fantastic piece of filmmaking. I thought it was the fact that there's 4 guys in this little group, so each one's got a slightly different story. So like you say, you're bound to sort of see yourself or connect with one of the characters. Vinterberg and Mikkelsen had already worked together on The Hunt, an incredible movie, an incredible performance by Mikkelsen. Very, very difficult film in that he plays a teacher who is accused of touching a young pupil and stuff like that, and he's completely vilified by the community and stuff like that, even though he didn't do it. It's like, how does an accusation like that affect someone? And it's interesting to see here a character who initially had potentially sort of shied away from alcohol, and then they all decide to do this. It starts off as a very sort of academic experiment, and then they seem to get a benefit from it and enjoy it, so they start to take it a bit further and a bit further, and you know that it's not going to end well at some point. There must be a downside to it. Obviously it's an interesting film to watch from a UK perspective, because the drinking culture in Denmark is quite different. They seem to be slightly more liberal in their approach to sort of younger people sort of drinking, going on these massive sort of sessions and stuff like that, but they are seeming able to sort of control it and other points and stuff like that. So it's quite an interesting sort of education on that side of it. I know that Leonardo DiCaprio is sort of hinted at doing a remake in the US, but I don't think it's a film which would easily translate in terms of the UK, certainly with like, the laddish binge drinking culture and stuff like that. I just don't think it would work. It's quite an interesting watch. And one thing that I have noticed recently is I could imagine that people, now that it's out, sort of claiming that this film probably glamorizes drinking in some way, because you see all the shots of them, drinking and having parties and stuff like this. And quite interestingly, I believe Studio Canal were sending out promotional packages to critics, which basically included old-fashioned cocktail making kits, which I thought was a slightly interesting choice. It'd be like sending out steaks to those people who are watching First Cow or something. But so watching it, I was thinking, anyone who can watch this movie and say that it glamorizes drinking, it makes you want to have a drink, were probably the same sort of people who watched or didn't watch Trainspotting and claimed that it glamorized heroin and would make everyone want to take heroin. I don't think there was anyone who came away from Trainspotting on the first watch and went, I really want to go out and get some smack. It's just one of those things. It shows you the highs, but it also shows you the lows, and the quite tragic lows at times. And I think it was a really balanced view on it. It could have been, it could have been done in like a comedy way. If the US were doing it, I could see it as a comedy film, but it's a very sort of tragic drama. And I think Vinterberg managed to sort of find the right balance between the two. I mean, how did you find the switching between the sort of the comic and the tragic of the film?
Yeah, you're kind of expecting it that whole time, isn't it? Because the experiment is just going too well. I mean, I was sitting there thinking, going, I'm going out for some drinks tomorrow with my friends. This is going to be like, the solution. I've barely had a drink in a little while, so I was looking forward to it. And it's one of those things you can almost imagine, just like messaging your pals as soon as you come out of the cinema, just going, pints, question mark. But it's one of those things. I'd read a really good interview about with Mads Mikkelsen, where he was talking about the character, and he was like, he goes, Martin is a man standing on the platform, and the train has left him. A man who's slowly but surely cracking up. He's just sitting there feeling pity about himself, and it dawns on him that he's wasted his life. That's at least what he thinks. Throughout this experiment, he realizes it's not something that he has to regret in his past. He loves his wife, he loves his family, and he used to love his job. It's just about seeing everything again, recharging his eyes, and falling in love with the present again. And it's one of those ones I remember just watching that bit at the beginning where I just felt so much pity for him, just sat at that table having, not judging him for having his water, but he's just sitting there having his water. He's dead behind the eyes. Like, they're just, you can see that was a broken and sad man. And that's something I think we're seeing a lot in our people around us, and the mental health crisis that we're kind of going through at the moment. There is a lot of Martins out there, across all genders and backgrounds and so on at the moment. And it's being present again in, that's something I'm trying to do myself and so on. I think I've been, I have regrets about my past, but then there's also the anxiety about the future, where we're living through and having to live with COVID and all the worries and how that's changed everything and like that. And it's how do we become present again? It's not just about getting the drink in us, it's about realizing what's around us and enjoying those things again, and not thinking, right, if I go hang out with Dallas, I've got to break the rules to travel up the country, or I could be putting him at risk, and all these sorts of things that just go through your mind, where it's like, how do we get back there again? And I think the message of the film is so powerful. And I think if you keep that the mind of like, what's this character kind of going through, you don't come away glamorizing it or looking too much at the highs and lows. It's just thinking about this character's journey, and hopefully we all get to where he gets to at the end of this film. Like, I know I would love to get to that, and I'm looking forward to moments being surrounded by friends where we're all carefree again, even if it's just for a few moments.
I know, Sundance, London, end of the month, we'll all be finding the nearest dock and doing the dance. But it's like, I personally don't really drink, so I was quite interested to see how this film was going to affect me and look at it, because I would have been like Martin at the beginning of the movie, where all his mates are drinking and stuff like that, and for the longest time, like my mates and stuff like that, the peer pressure you would have to drink to enjoy yourself is quite something. But gradually over time, I think as we've gotten older, obviously, one night out, you can't do two nights out in a row, or even if you have one big night out, you then screws you over for the next couple of days. I think we're all a bit more aware of how it affects our bodies and stuff like that, and there's less pressure. I'm still forgetting they've kind of accepted that, but I can't remember what film it was, but I think it was something like "How Do I Know" or something, which weirdly doesn't have a question mark in the title. It starts like Reese Witherspoon or something, and Owen Wilson or something. But somebody used the phrase, "Never drink to feel good. Don't drink to feel better." So it's like if you're having a bad day, if you go out drinking, it's probably not going to help. You want the alcohol or something to enhance your mood. If you're having a good time already, that's when you want it. So it's when you start going down that slippery road of drinking, and it certainly looks into that sort of thing. And I think it's really sort of interesting take on it and how it affects different characters and how they're all at different spots in the mind, and it shows you the highs, it shows you the lows, and I think everyone will probably come away with different opinions on how it affects characters and how it's going to affect themselves sort of moving forward. But I mean, it is an odd. I think it is odd that the film, which is it does have so many highs and lows. It's nice that it chooses to end on this huge moment of hope. It's not really is it a spoiler? Because it feels like it's been everywhere for the past sort of 8 months, but people are only experiencing it now. And there's this incredible sequence at the end where there's just this huge sort of release on the part of Matt Mikkelsen's character, where he does this sort of improvised dance around the dock. It's like the pupils' sort of graduation or something like that, and they're on these trucks, they're all having drinks and stuff like that, and him and his fellow teachers sort of join in, and there's this incredible dance sequence. Apparently, it's like, it's shocking. It's like when you I had a similar sort of notion as to when I watched, was it Marriage Story, and Adam Driver started singing. It's like suddenly you realize that, oh, Mads Mikkelsen apparently was a trained dancer and stuff like that. You're like, oh wow, this is amazing. And it was something incredible to watch, even just on a small screen on my phone. But I'm keen to know, obviously the film screenings aren't as busy as they would be these days due to social distancing. But I mean, what was the reaction like to when you saw it on the big screen? And was there could you gauge people's reactions when they were coming out of the film at the end?
Not too much. I had quite a quiet screening. Mine was even though it was a Friday evening, about back of 5, it was competing with the World Cup. I think it was like Spain were playing someone, so it was a bit more of a limited crowd. But I can only go on how I felt, and I was like, it kind of helped that I knew that ending was coming, and even though I'd forgotten huge chunks of the film, to almost to the extent where I felt like disingenuous that I'd even logged that I'd even seen the film last year, it was one of those things. It was just like, it was nice to know that it was coming, like it that this character would get his moment, and you were just so invested in it, of like, just stick with it, Martin. Like, I know things are going bad, but like you knew that a good time was coming, and like that. All the times he was like, I'm not going to dance, I've lost it my back, and you're sitting there thinking, it's not, you won't be saying that come the end, and so on. So it was nice. It's just nice. We've talked about it before. It's nice to have like an audience faith rewarded, but sometimes it's nice to, when there's you're watching characters go through a tough time in a film, of just having it in the back of your head going, it's going to be okay. It's not going to end in this really depressing European film manner. There's going to be a nice dance scene at the end. There's going to be some good things. They'll look good as gifts and stuff. So yeah, it made me happy to watch it. And I'm sure it would have been better to be surprised by it, but hey, I was looking forward to that moment the whole time.
Absolutely. I mean, we can now expect probably a similar sort of I think it'll probably become the new meme, where it's one of those film clips which then gets different songs put on the top of it. So I'm sure we can expect to see that over the next sort of months. It will replace the Fast and Furious ones just before you get tired of them, I'm sure. But as that was quite the double bill we had this week, and we're going to be back next week with potentially an even weirder double bill as we take our first steps back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in what it feels like about 2 years or something like that, with Black Widow. And we're also going to try and get ourselves a bit of a French exit, not from the Cannes Film Festival, but from Azael Jacobs' new film starring Michelle Pfeiffer. So we'll see you next time, but we're off to go dance around a dock.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.